Thank you. I'm Reinoud.
I'm Arjen.
I'm Arjen. We're working at Freedom Internet. I assume most of you have heard the name a little bit. Like you said, people see us as the next phase in access for all. Most of the people at Freedom have actually worked at access for all. And I will tell a little bit about what happened and how we are doing this. But we try to do this in a duo presentation.
We did not practice.
No, so we'll improvise and see where we go. So we'll tell a little bit about the history, our organization, which is a little bit peculiar, but has a good reason. Then some steps in how you actually start an ISP, which is a lot less technical than, well, most of us would think about. There's more than just access. There's lots of stuff involved. Of course, there's a little bit of networking involved as well. And we have learned some lessons, some positive, some negative. So let's go back a little bit to January 2019. In January, the KPN announced that it would stop access for all. There was a lot of news about that. A lot of people were disappointed. So immediately, Kirsten Verdel started an action committee, if that's a proper English term, and launched a petition. A lot of people signed it. I think about 50,000. Hey, this is something that should not happen. Access for all is more than just an ISP. It's more than just a brand. It stands for something in the Netherlands, and there's a lot of history going back and how it started. But
could you move a bit closer?
A bit closer. So yes, okay. Making short, there were discussions about between access for all, the board and the action committee, but still, KPN announced the decision is final. So there was the actiegroep Access for All moet blijven. They started in the Waag in January. And next month, February and March, the talks did not really go well. So they start thinking about a plan B. So what if KPN would really go on with stopping access for all? We should do something. So the plan B was, let's start a new ISP. Well, that's really easy to say, but then you actually have to do something. Well, the month after that, it was really announced, hey, there will be a plan B, and there were some protests still at the Rijksmuseum, which, of course, gave a nice picture. The month after that, there was a board, how do you call it, an investor shareholder meeting at the KPN, and they made an extra entrance just to make them nice visuals. And they also had a meeting with the CEO of KPN, Ibarra, which the guy who sometime later made the famous quote, "Nothing will really change for access for all customers." That was his quote. So there were some other things going on. There were more meetings, and KPN announced it. No, we don't want alternative plans. And then Ibarra even left KPN for other reasons, I hope.
Go for his quote.
Yeah. Okay. So the OR of Access for All did a really good fight, but failed, and we all know the results now. In short, the OR lost the court file, and so we went to Plan B. In November, we started the crowdfunding campaign, so said, hey, we really want to start this new ISP, and which is, of course, a hard thing these times in the Netherlands, because normally, if you want to start a new company, you make a business plan, you see, hey, I see some market potential, I do some investments, and I may get profitable. But of course, here, the total reason to start it was totally different. But we started a crowdfunding campaign, and it took us 3 days to get 2.5 million euros. And those were loans. But that meant, okay, we're not the only ones who think something should actually be done. We have a lot of people who are standing behind us, that support us and really want to pay with their wallet, says, hey, here's some money, please make a nice company. So we did. So at November 11th, 2019, almost 2 years ago, we announced, okay, we start Freedom Internet. There was a new name. People could sign up as a founding member. Said, okay, you get a special privilege. You will get a stamp to be a founding member of this new company. And at May 1st, we also got an AS number, and we really started. The founding members originally only could apply for an email account at freedom.nl. But, of course, we needed some infrastructure. We got a nice AS number, and we started with that. Well, we're working very hard to realize all this. And, of course, having a growing company, we needed more money, because it's really nice and dandy, all that. But the problem with starting an ISP is you have to invest in your customers. It takes some time before you really start earning money from them. So we needed some more money. We did the second crowdfunding campaign this year. And, well, it went a little bit slower. It only took 2 weeks to raise 4 million. And this time, people could really invest into them. The first one were loans, but the second crowdfunding, people could buy certificaten, which are basically shares without the right to have a vote. But people own a little bit of the company. And we got more than 1,800 investors. A lot of them were not companies, but consumers. And on average, people invested more than 2,000 euros, which really is a lot. So it still feels like a privilege that we have so many people who are really willing to invest in us and believe in us. So now we have to live up to the promise. So, this is your part? Yeah.
That was your part, but okay.
Yeah.
I can tell this too.
Yeah.
The Freedom Organization is actually a limited liability company. That's the big square on the bottom. That's where we work, where we are employees. And we are initially, before the second crowdfunding, we were owned with 100% by the Stichting Appeltaart. This is a foundation that oversees us, that is basically the owner of the company. And next to that, Bits of Freedom, which is a privacy organization, registered the freedom.nl domain, and they lent that to us. We have it on loan, and if we do not live to our promises, then Bits of Freedom would take freedom.nl away, and we are screwed. But as Reinoud already said, the first money was a loan. It's strange money. You need to give it back. So we had a second crowdfunding campaign where people could get a certificate on the shares of the limited liability company. And so we had a second Stichting Appelpunt. And the Stichting Appelpunt, you could get certificates from them for a share of freedom. And Stichting Appeltaart and Stichting Appelpunt both have 50% of the shares. Next to that, I forgot to say, that is een raad van advies, an advisory board. Just as the first speaker had in their organization, some well-known people that give us solicited and unsolicited advice on our operations. Then there is money involved. So if Freedom Internet would make a profit, then we would give dividend. 50% of the dividend goes to the Stichting Appeltaart for doing good things. And 50% goes to the Stichting Appelpunt, which then will pay dividend to the certificate holders. This was also my part.
Yeah. Well,
but you can do that.
Yeah, let's. When people sometimes ask why this complicated construction, but there's a few nice things in here. Bits of Freedom has loaned us our main domain name. And that means if we totally start doing strange things which are not the intention, they just take it away and we're out of business. So there is a real good watchdog. And also the construction with the Stichting Appeltaart has also made sure we're not easily to be bought by some other company. And that's the whole purpose of this company. We want to be independent and not be bought in a few years by some big multinational or American company. Just so we can stay focused on improving the internet. And once we start making money, which will probably take 1 or 2 years, depending on how fast everything goes. But the future, of course, with COVID is a little bit different than we originally thought. Once we start making money, the meaning is that we can start doing projects to start fixing the internet. Because we all know the internet these days is a little bit different than we thought it would be 20 years ago when a lot of us started working on the internet. And we can still fix things, but we might have to organize projects to do that. Well, the whole purpose of Freedom Internet is to be a good internet citizen and actively help projects that will improve it, like the NLNOG ring, but not limited to things like that. So we have a few nice guards in place to actually stay focused and keep being the company with the intentions that we have. And some people might also think, hey, the Stichting Appeltaart and Appelpunt is also a tradition way going back, not only at Access for All, but even back to Hectic, where the traditional reward for all the questions they asked was always, you can win an Appeltaart. So all those old traditions still are continuing, and we try to keep the old spirit alive. So, now back to you.
Yeah, they are really continuing. Sometimes I can't see an appeltaart anymore. But yeah, starting an ISP is that's we're talking about Access for All. In those days actually it was new, so it wasn't simple. But now it would be pretty simple, right? You just make some connections, and you make a connection to the internet and your business. But yeah, there is money involved. And money means contracts, and that means hassle, and then there is more money involved because these last lines are not phone lines anymore. Well, yeah, they are used to be phone lines. There are DSL connections. There are fiber to the home, and we can't dig to every house, so we have to have access providers involved. People that have the last mile to the homes, to the consumers. And that means more contracts to these people. And those have consequences, because what if a customer leaves? If a customer is unhappy with, for example, our TV service, then he would cancel his contract, but you still have a contract with this, can I do a laser pointer thing? Well, between us and the access provider. And the access provider says, well, the contract says that the line is for a year. So then we have to pay for that. So that comes really with consequences, and that has more a consequence, like what if somebody moves? Actually, a customer moving from one house to the other is remarkably complicated. Because he needs a new line first in his new house and keeps the line in the old house. What do you do with your contract? What if the technology changes? Because we provide a modem or a router to the customer that has, for example, DSL modem, but this new house has a fiber to the home connection and needs another modem, or the other way around, it needs another speed with a different price. What if he has fiber to the home, but it is Ethernet or active optical networking, AON, and the new connection is GPON, needs a new modem? Or what if, for example, the modem fits, but the connection in the home is an APC connector, in this new house is a PC connector, or the other way around, and the customer just takes the connector width and plugs it into the other side, and things don't work. Remarkably complicated. And when can we cancel the old line? Because sometimes a customer moves to a new home, and the new home is still being built, and he would move the 1st of September yesterday, but the new home is not ready, so he still sits in his own old home. You don't know that all, because also the access provider abstracts the connection as well. And even more complicated if you have multiple access providers. Somebody moves to the other. And this is all very, very complicated, more complicated than you think. And there's more involved. We have lots of other services than just access. And that is what Reinoud is going to talk about.
Yeah, because, well, in the old days, like most of us started, it was just the connection and the rest was done. But, of course, email, a basic thing, is not something you build in 1 week. So we have some external parties that help us. We have one for email. We have one for television, which is way more complicated than it originally looks. We have telephony, but also something simple like your modem or your router at home. There's a manufacturer involved where you say, hey, can you please put in some configurations that work with us? But, well, we don't have a stack of those in the office, so we have a logistic partner that handles sends all those boxes to the customers with the right connections, of course, but also handles the returns. People that cannot install it themselves, we have to have an external party that sends engineers to homes to help people install all the stuff. Of course, we have to have some financial administration that has a payment provider. So we have lots of external companies, and well, of course, here in the picture, you also see RIPE is involved somewhere. We all need RIPE, but well, if you go to RIPE and says, hey, we want a bunch of IPv4 addresses, well, that's not as easy as it used to be. So there are some address brokers involved, and then, okay, the money, we still have to get in some money to actually run the company, so we have to send out invoices, have a process for that. So it's lots more complicated than just the technology itself. There's lots of contracts involved with external parties, lots of APIs, lots of whitelisting, testing, setting things up, and of course, nothing is stable because next month we're going to announce some new service, so we have to work on with extra new external parties or change the things we're working with external parties. So it's not as simple as it was. And even the networking itself is complicated. We have an order management system that's called SOMS, which is SOMS Order Management System in the GNU fashion. We developed that in-house. We have a few programmers working on that because that's where all our business logic lives. And of course, there's synchronous messaging and asynchronous messaging because not everything you want will be ready in half a second. Some ordering might take some time. So this is the part we decided we really need to build ourselves, and it's communicating with all kinds of external parties. What you see here, something like antivirus. People expect it, but okay, how do we get it? How do we get licenses at people's homes? Where do we buy it? Where have we got an inventory of which are still available? We have some resellers because there are some sites on the internet where you can just compare different ISPs. Well, if you want to have those, you need to build something as well. And of course, we have access providers, and we will have more access providers in the future. Not all of them work exactly in the same way. So it's hard to do stuff like that. And of course, there will be more external parties. We have all kinds of plans for extra services, which are not announced yet. Some we will build ourselves, but some we say, well, something is out there, and we can easily provide that to our users. That might be faster and better. So we built an order management system and made it as generic as possible because we don't know today yet what it will have to do tomorrow. So, of course, we have some internal tooling as well, and we try to keep it as standard as possible. We do some provisioning, and we did it by Ansible, which we didn't even draw here because, well, that's something almost standard. We use external services like PagerDuty. We use a ticketing system because a lot of the people, almost half of the people who are currently working at us are our help desk. So we need a good ticketing system. And we have the standard stack. I think the most things are pretty well known. We use Grafana, we use Prometheus, we use Elk, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. We use LibreNMS to watch our network. We have a forum site. We don't have a news server these days anymore, but we have a forum site which runs on Discourse. Of course, we use a GitLab instance for our source code repository. We still use Jira and Confluence, which are external American companies, but we are looking to alternatives for that. But we have a nice few alternatives. We have Snipe IT for asset management because, well, the number of assets you have in a company explodes when you start up new things. One of the really good choices we made was using Netbox as the CMDB, and we have everything in there, VMs, networking. It's our main IP registration, and it also acts like primary DNS for reverse DNS and our internal DNS. Of course, we use Power DNS for both our authoritative DNS and our recursive DNS. We use FreeRadius, and of course, Genie ACS, because we have to manage a lot of modems and routers which are working at people's homes. So there's a big tool set involved, and you have to stand it out of the ground as fast as possible. And one of the hard things, of course, is that, well, you can make a nice plan for that and say, hey, let's design a network, let's design a complete tool stack, but some things will have to start working tomorrow. So, but I think most of the technicians here are used to that. You can make a nice plan, but the business always requires things to be ready now instead of really building it up in the way you want it. So.
Yeah, you already described the next.
I described everything already. Yeah. But for the people who really like the words are in there. We also designed the internal network to be nice and safe and separated because, well, if you use a lot of different applications, I assume that one of those will be hacked at some point in time. So let's design our network to mitigate those problems as much as possible. So we made what we call silos, which are different compartments in the networks, and all major applications run in their own silo, and access to other silos is as minimal as possible. We do a lot of filtering in there. All services that are available to the internet are behind a load balancer. So that also an extra layer of defense. All the silos, of course, we make a lot of them. So to minimize the configuration networking-wise, we use OSPF for that, so then the other ones can fight each other. And yeah, like I said, their front proxy is our main guard for the outside world. We, of course, use VMs, and our platform for that is Proxmox, so we can make them by hand or script those as well. And that's basically keep it as simple as possible. It's already complicated enough, so we try to make standards and as little exceptions as possible. Internally, we use mainly IPv4. Of course, at some places, IPv6 is needed for some applications. We considered using IPv6 only, but not all applications are ready for that, alas. So we still need to have a mixed stack. So, the networking.
Yeah, this is the typical ISP network. I start from the bottom. You have the last mile, the CPEs on the bottom, and they go in via an access provider into a BRAS, a broadband access server. Then it's IP routing internally. You can go to our servers that we just described a bit, for example, DNS, or up to the internet through our BGP routers. This is a very typical ISP network. It's basically pretty boring. The last mile, we use PPOE tunnels. These are terminated on the BRAS, And the reason to use PPOE instead of DHCP is because the access networks, they are very diverse and they typically do not support IPv6. They do not have DHCP v6. And to use a PPOE tunnel, you become independent for your services on the access networks. The BRAS talks with the radius servers for the authentication and authorization. And that their PPOE is very handy because you can enrich the signal, the PPP signaling, by a ID that identifies the physical connection to the house. So the subscriber identification is out of bounds, basically. There is a password so you can type into your modem, you can type in any password, you can type in any username. We don't use it. We just look like what is the line, what is the ID that identifies your house, basically. And then we outsourced a lot. Basically almost everything. Only the upper square, the BGP routers, some DNS servers, the ACS, that is what we do ourselves. And the rest, it's all outsourced. And that is also more work than you think. That's why we had this SOBS, that's basically the spider in the web, that talks to all these different parties to order, to cancel an order, to change something. To do that. The access is done by another ISP that has the contacts with the access provider, that has the contact with the last mile providers. They also do radius. So we have an API telling them, like, these are our subscribers. They assign the IP addresses. Basically, we do almost nothing. And we still have a lot of work to do. What we're going to do, this is more in the future, we're going to insource the BRAS and the radius servers. One of the reasons is IPv4 allocation. There's a whole section on that I'm going to talk about. But to go a bit ahead, we would like to change IP addresses sometimes because IP addresses, IPv4 addresses that we have are often not so good. And I come to that later. It might be, because what our unique selling point will be is that we can have different access providers, different fiber to the home projects that are all over the country to have contact with that. And some of them might require that they run the BIOS. And now we are like experimenting, thinking, can we run radius ourselves? Can we get things like syslog or flow data in from an external BIOS so that we can still do the subscription, the subscriber administration ourselves, that we can still do the troubleshooting ourselves, because one of the big problems with outsourcing is troubleshooting is way harder. You don't have the logs, you don't have flow data, you don't have, basically you don't have anything. You either need to build an API for it, or you need to ask other operators that also like buried in work. The current network also has some redundancy issues, and that is not the fault of the partner that we work with for the access. These access providers, they have a rather curious way of doing redundancy, namely you have a number of links, this is this village, that is that village, and you bundle them together in a link, and now you have the redundant link that are different villages in different cities. So if this is one link falls, then yeah, the rest of the country is still available, but other people not. I think it's curious, but that's how things work in access world. And basically the current situation is that there are two BRASs, one does a bunch of modems, and the other one does a bunch of modems with a third-party access provider in between. I want to get it something like this, that these things are redundant. That only this last mile to one individual house, okay, that is then not redundant, but the rest should be redundant. This is going to be a lot of work. And I want to go to multiple data centers, because right now our equipment is in NICHEF, and at some point we need to make that also more redundant. The top part, to all the different providers, to our own servers, we make as redundant as we can. And then the lessons learned. You started already a bit about the legacy.
Yes, of course. As you all know, once you start a totally new company, you can take all the lessons learned, all the experience you have over the last 10 or 20 or 30 years, depending on your age, and make something totally new, and you don't repeat all the mistakes from the past, right? Sure. Yeah. So, now back to the real world. Of course, there are some things that are rushed. To be able to start at November 11th, we got a lot of help from all kinds of people around us that just hacked some solutions together to make a working website, to make an ordering site. Lots of thanks to all kinds of people. I cannot name you all personally, but we're really in debt to you. But of course, that means there's a system which works totally different than the system we designed and are building. So from day one, you already have legacy. And as we all know, legacy is really hard to get rid of. Our first system was still used a long time to just look up, hey, how did these people actually sign up? What were the dates? And of course, it was in a totally different format than our new system. So the conversion, yeah, we could convert that data, but yeah, that's a lot of work, and we already have a lot of work. So just let that old system run for a while. And of course, a while is always longer than you think. So it's easy to introduce, even at a new company, even with a lot of experience. From day one, you have legacy, and legacy is always hard to get rid of. We had an infrastructure which was always also really a few donations, a lot of hardware we got. Also, thanks for the partners who gave that to us, but we wanted to have a different structure, and moving all those VMs to our newly designed network took way longer than we had hoped. So it's, yeah, everybody knows it, and it's still true. Legacy is easy to introduce and hard to get rid of. So.
Then IPv4 LRS space. We got 2/22s, I think 23s from WIPE NCC, and that's not enough to run a consumer ISP on. We did consider for a little bit if you do DS Lite, where we do only IPv6 and we tunnel and we do NAT on IPv4, but that wouldn't really come up to our quality standards. So we went from IP brokers, we went IP addresses. And in that sense, it was a pity that there is no quiz anymore on the end, because otherwise I might have gotten another /24. But we get this address space from all over the world from brokers, and then you get really weird things. Like Twitter, people getting Arab advertisements. And this is a bit amusing, but you also have people that really are blocked because they appear to come from an Arab IP address for their work. Then we have people doing all kinds of blocking. This is done from a small publisher company that still didn't manage to get rid of their security product that basically incorporates MaxMind's GeoLite free database. And that's like a static database that goes in that WordPress security product. And only when you update it, there might be a new database in it. So it takes a really long time before you actually get your addresses done. And then you call these people. And then you get things like, well, of course you have to request Dutch addresses. Where? From the Dutch government. Or you have to get them registered at the Dutch government. And this is not one. This is a lot of sysadmins have that idea. Or you get people say like, oh, well, our sysadmin really knows the internet, and he says, talk to KPN, because they do the internet. Or talk to your ISP. I am the ISP. So this is a considerable amount of work goes into clearing up these IPv4 addresses. But there's also like fun things then, like people that just unblock you and make an exception. People that actually, quite a big media organization in the Netherlands, figured out that they paid MaxMind for years, but used their free product. And thanks to us, they actually figured it out. Or a large organization that somebody started to run into the organization and finally got everything unblocked, and is very happy that she knows now how it works. And then television. Well, if IPv4 addresses are a nightmare, television is really a nightmare. And that has largely to do with television rights. They are expensive and they are weird. Expensive in the sense that media channels want to have all their channels into your basic package, but costs a lot of money. Or things like, we have these markers that starts where this program starts and program ends is for advertisement. You cannot use them for recordings. You have to have a human doing that. Why? I don't know, but that's apparently what is in these contracts. Also, well-known things as you cannot go fast forward to advertisement and stuff. A lot and lots of pesky things into these contracts, which made us to outsource television. And we outsourced it to a party. We didn't have much choice to outsource this to different parties. And the quality of this party was way below par. We got really a matic fuck ton of complaints about this. And the first one was their STB. That was a really old-fashioned product, like 1990 user interface, slow, didn't work. And luckily we got this replaced by a more modern STB, but the quality remained below par. So this is what the Consumentenbond said from it, that we got a 5.7, and if you are like in school, 5.5 was enough, I think, but this is basically the mentality of this company. And then, you have to troubleshoot it. But this television, that's multicast, goes directly to the access provider. It doesn't traverse our network at all. Basically, there's nothing to work with, except you can ask complainers to make a PCAP, make a TCP dump on the modem. That's a possibility that is in the modems. Send it, and then we knew that that they use RFC 1918 addresses, and we got a bit slow, but we got so in contact with the network people of the television provider, and they said like, oh wait, you're using those RFC 1918 addresses? Well, we use them internally as well, and that means that our decoders would not cache, because we switched it off so that we can test easily ourselves, which meant that a large part of our customers got live encoded television, and that doesn't work really well. So using RFC 1918 addresses over different companies, and they basically pushed by us started to look at the data the STBs can provide to them, and then we saw that a lot of retry traffic, so most of the television, live television is multicasted, but the STBs can say, like, well, I didn't get that frame, send it through unicast to me, that's retry traffic, and you can really see a clearly distinction between fiber to the home providers and DSL providers. Multicast works remarkably well on DSL, and not so well on Ethernet fiber to the home. And I suspect that has to do with multicast forwarding capabilities into switches. And I suspect, I don't know, but I say it anyway, I suspect it hasn't really been tested well. But the RC 1918 addresses and some other things, things improve a bit. I would not say it's smiley in here, but it improves a little bit. And then...
Yeah. Now, one of the things you forgot to mention is, of course, we have a lot of external parties we're working with, but because of the rights of television licenses, we could not resell the television product. So our customers are, when they order television, will become a customer of our television partner as well. So we looked at their algemene voorwaarden, and I said, yeah, well, these are not what we really accept. They might be standard in the television world, but we don't accept them. So we took a nice battle with them, and we actually rewrote parts of those terms of, what's the English term? Terms and conditions, thank you. So that actually benefited all the other customers of that company as well. So that's the first step in improving the internet for us. But one of the lessons learned, also, we have a loyal fan base, which we can only thank. I think a lot of them are here as well. We have a lot of founding members, we have a lot of investors. And a lot of those are also in the Consumentenpanel. The Consumentenbond does these researches about all kinds of products, about the best stuff to wash your dishes with, but they also do some investigations about internet providers. And we were voted the best provider overall, even with our under-par television product. And well, we have a lot of goodwill, and without those loyal fans, we would not be here today. So it's really cool that there's a lot of people in the Netherlands that actually believe in our mission to say, hey, there should be a company that's not owned by some big shareholder investment structure that only wants to make money, but a company that still has the good spirit to do the right thing and to solve the internet problems. So we have a lot of goodwill, a lot of investors, and by now a lot of owners, because, like I said, we had 1,800 people invest in the last crowdfunding. So we have a lot of people to keep up our promises. So that was basically it. Yeah.
Thank you, Reinoud. Thank you, Arjen. Other questions? I see Jan Zoort has a question. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hello. Jan George from Six Connect. So many questions, but I will just ask 3, okay? Okay. Of course, IPv6. What size of a prefix did you decide to assign to the customers? And are you assigning it dynamically or statically? And for IPv4, do you give a public IPv4 address to each customer, or you're doing CGN?
We give a public IPv4 address to each customer. One modem gets one public IPv4 address. It's static. Same goes for that it is static for IPv6. Everybody gets a /48.
Thank you.
And we will start to give people, there's still a few people who require IPv4 subnets, and we will start offering that as an extra service, I think October.
Yeah, it should be live on October, and what we tend to do is there to set up a sort of route reflector that sets the next hop of that little subnet to the modem of the customer.
Joris, next question. Go ahead.
Yeah, Joris Klaassen, Arista Networks, and also Freedom Investor. I happen to live in an unlucky location right now, where there's no fiber to the home, and DSL, pretty much sucks. Now I know that ACM did open up, or at least get some legislation in place to open up the cable market as well. Are you looking at that for access too?
Yeah. When I just joined Freedom, that was a court case going on by the ACM saying like Ziggo, you need to open your network for others. We were in talk even with Ziggo for that. But then the ruling was, no, you don't have to do that, Ziggo, and also KPN, you don't have to do that. Okay. So that went completely other way than expected. We would love to go on cable as a sort of second provider.
Okay, thanks.
See, we have another question. Go ahead.
Hi, Carl again. Do you guys have good lawyers and negotiators so that lawyers for your GDPR and other compliance and negotiators for escalation matrices that match the ones you present to your customers?
Yeah, what is good? We do have a legal scholar that works for us, and the rest I can't really say. Do we hire somebody?
Yeah, of course. One of the board members, Shura, in the Stichting Appeltaart, is also part of the privacy company. So we have lots of contacts around there, and of course lots of help offered by people as well. So that's part of our loyal fan base.
But talking about the negotiators, because you outsource so much. So, for instance, you promise your customers you'll have them up within, say, 6 hours, for instance. And if it goes to the next day, then it gets escalated to the next level, technical and managerial level, and so on. But if you're depending on another provider, like the access circuit provider, then their escalation matrix would have to match yours, so that if you promise 6 hours to your customer, then they promise 6 hours to get your connection working again as well.
Yeah, I'm not exactly aware how the escalation matrices fit together. I do see that we didn't foresee a lot of things beforehand that we're now bumping into. That's large part of the work, basically. So, yeah, in hindsight, you might have like foreseen things and put it in contracts. In the end, also, it has to do with the capabilities of the access provider or the other providers. What is available? How much resources do they have available? And it tends to be that the larger the company, the more difficult it becomes. But when it's a really small company, then it also just people are strained on resources to do things. And a consumer ISP is that is about big numbers. It's about a lot of people. So you need to do a lot of help desk work, and then funnel that into to some kind of question towards the contractors. So outsourcing, there is indeed a lot of work in making good arrangements and having good communication. And with one company, it goes better than with the other.
Okay, thanks.